Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Kyle, where your eponymous host spends time with his good friends drinking coffee and catching up about life and ministry. And I am really excited about the folks who I have on with us this morning. Today we are welcoming the Reverend Doctors Kevin Starcher and Jason Cashing, who were classmates of mine at Louisville Seminary. And we're going to be talking a little bit about what it's like to be doing ministry with first responders, specifically fire departments today. That's something that both of these gentlemen know a little something about, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves, say where they are and the kind of ministry they're doing. So guys, I don't care which one goes first, just say hello and what you're about and up to.
Kevin, you go first.
Good morning, Kyle. My name is Kevin Starcher. I'm the pastor of Covenant Presbyterian Church in Boise, Idaho, and it is a thrill to be with you to talk about something that has meant much to me, ministry in the fire EMS world. I've been out of it for 3 years, and I miss it terribly, but I spent 10 years as a firefighter EMT in the mountains of Colorado and the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. But let's hear from the current firefighter.
Yes, good morning, Kyle. Again, I echo what Kevin said. It's a joy to be here. And if it looks like I'm starting off in space, it's just because of where my camera is. I'm not actually that spaced out. I'm currently serving as the pastor at Gregory Memorial Presbyterian Church in Prince George, Virginia, just south of Richmond a little ways. And one of the things that I am actively currently doing is serving as both a certified firefighter in our local department, but also as the head fire and EMS chaplain for our fire and EMS in the county. So I work with a couple other really outstanding fellow chaplains, and we provide just pastoral care and support and a degree of community, depth of community to those who dedicate their lives also to serving those who are in need. I got my start with EMS when I was back in college, and I did it off and on for a while, and then recently added fire as well, and dropped EMS. I kind of got burned out on that side, but enjoy the fire aspect of it now. So yeah, it's something that I'm still actively doing and is an active part of my ministry as well.
And just to catch up everyone, these two fellows are much more versed and involved than I, but I do have the pleasure of serving as the volunteer chaplain for the Alamance Fire Department, which if you're familiar with the church, you know is just right next door, and have really enjoyed forming and cultivating relationships there and working with that department. And a lot of what I have done with them is actually just being a listening ear for a number of folks, not just at the Alamance department, but also in some others, and just being a pastoral presence and voice and catching up with folks who have gone through a particular trauma, a difficult call, and need that ear. And it's been a real privilege to do that alongside the fire department. And so that's my background in this, but it's also something I'm really interested in, and I wanted to talk to you both about. And so my first question, and again, these can just be toss-ups with you. My first question is what have you learned from your work in the fire departments that informs the ministry that you do in the congregation, or how do you see those things related?
I think that one of the things that I've been realizing recently, and honestly, the lockdown time period has given me a lot of time to kind of take a deeper reflection on some of the things that I've been doing and how they interrelate. I think one of the things that I've come to realize a bit more is that what we do, and Kyle, what you mentioned echoes strongly what I do and probably what Kevin has experienced as well. but what happens in the fire department happens in a short and intense time period, but it's the same kind of dynamics that happen in churches that may or may not be facing times of transition or anxiety or shifting of identity or purpose. Just in a church, it's on a longer time frame, but the dynamics are very similar in terms of what individuals and as an organization they're going to experience and encounter, and the perspectives that they're going to move through. There's a lot of similarity, and really the only thing that changes is how quickly that happens, and how quickly it's encountered and processed.
Yeah, I would echo what Jason has to say. I viewed my work in fire and EMS service as an extension of my own call. The parable of the Good Samaritan really sticks out. God desires us to go out of our way to help other people, and every call is an opportunity to deliver God's grace with particular skill. But I think that's transferable to any vocation that people find themselves in. You don't need to be a firefighter or EMT to help people, but obviously those are the trades in our society that does that well. But how do we help? And you meet all kinds of God's people on a fire truck, and it's a lot of fun and really just a microcosm of the greater world.
Yeah.
But my question, Kyle, is when are you going to join the fire department as a firefighter? We can answer that at the end of the show, right? But that's going to be my question.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. I'll tell you, folks who are watching, that both of these friends have been on me about that for longer than I've been the pastor at Alamance. This is something that we've talked about, and this is the reason these two are the ones who immediately come to mind when I think about firefighters and first responders and learning how to do ministry with them and for them. And I learned most of what I know about that, if I know anything about it, from these two and the conversations we've had over the years that I've known them. So thank you for that. That was my good deflection of your very pointed question.
I'll ask it again later off the record. Don't worry.
That's fair. I will say, though, that I've really enjoyed building relationships with the department. The chief, and Chief, I hope you're watching. The chief of our department is absolutely a delight, and we've hit it off from the very beginning. And him being able to call on me and vice versa, and I do call on him. I call on the fire department to do things for the church. And that reconnecting that we have been doing since I've been the pastor has really been, for me, one of the highlights. And it's long been true in my context that quite a number of the volunteer firemen are also members of the congregation. And so there's a lot of commingling there, and a lot of just natural relationships, not just because of our proximity, but because we share people in common. And so that's been a real easy way for us to be closer, is just the fact that we use each other's resources and rely on each other. And it is great to have that right next door in case of an emergency, or even if I need people to, just to do some heavy lifting or help in a food pantry, or, come and spray the kids for a Bible school. Oh, I miss Bible school. But that's been good. So I wonder, sort of the flip side of that. What have you found that's really important for the fire department to have a pastoral presence in the mix? How has that, in your view, added to the work that they do? I think this is a really important question because I have been listening to a lot of the fire department conversations I've been having about some real need for that, and I've appreciated learning from you all about that. But what can you share about how being a pastor has made a difference in that work?
Society often wants to lift up our first responders in heroic ways. Every first responder I know that takes their job seriously recognizes that they're not a hero, that they're just an average human being. And occasionally these professionals see some difficult things. So just someone who can be with them to help them process something that is challenging is gold. And often that is just sitting at the firehouse table and being a good listener. Those things that we learn in seminary about pastoral care, just being present with someone as they go through a challenging time.
Yeah, and I would, again, I think you're going to find a lot of Kevin and I echoing each other because
we're the same person.
No, because there's truth in what we're saying and what we know. That's I mean, we are the same person, yes, but it goes also to what you were saying, Kyle, that we think so much in terms of, oh my goodness, there was a horrific accident, or this family just lost their entire worldly belongings, so we need a chaplain to step in and kind of that hero role. But that's maybe 5 to 8% of the ministry and chaplaincy that I probably provide, and that I think any of our chaplains provide. It's actually very minor. And what we do more so is that building of deeper relationships, the firehouse table, or the colloquialism that we use is tailboard counseling, where you sit on the front or the rear bumper of someone of an engine, and you're just sitting there talking, and before you know it, the conversation has moved around to something that you never would have thought to bring up in the first place, because it wasn't on your radar that this person might be questioning or struggling or trying to process through something. So that becomes all that much more beneficial when you are dealing with that person's one call, because as strong as we all are, and as much as we tend to put up that persona, there's that one call that sticks with us that we never really get over. So when you're sitting there and all of a sudden you're processing that person's one call, and you weren't expecting to do that at that point, or you're just talking in general and doing the foundational work, building the relationship, that's that pastoral side that comes into play. It's as like Kevin said, it's the pastoral presence and listening, and just being there, building relationship over the long term, and proving that it's non-judgmental, that it's that welcoming, safe space that, yeah, I don't care what it is you're going through, you can bring that up with me. And it's not like I'm going to run and tell chief or report it up the hierarchy, unless of course it's one of those mandated things that we need to report. But it's just a matter of, it doesn't matter how silly you might think this is, or how silly someone else might think this is. You're going through it, and I'll be here to go through it with you. And it doesn't matter that I'm a minister. It matters more that I'm here with you to give you that support and to be present with you. And I think that being a minister affords us that a little bit easier, but the work comes from building the relationship over time. The work is building the relationship over time. The benefit comes from that more so than rank or role or title, I think. But I think we are uniquely trained, equipped, and qualified to bring that to people whenever they end up needing it. Sorry, we're getting onto my soapbox soapbox issues and ministries now, so you can cut me off at any time.
No, I was going to do the opposite, actually. I think this is something that we all can respond to. And if it's not a fair question, I'll just cut here and we can do something else. But I know, Jason, you spent some time working on these issues for your doctoral work, and you addressed some of these things that you're talking about academically, which I think is wonderful. And really, I know has been, in addition to a great project, something that continues to inform what you do. But again, if it's not a fair question, it's not. But I wonder, kind of having spent some time with those issues and questions, what is it that you find firefighters or the first responder community in a broader sense really needing? This is something that I think I ask on behalf of the church often from different avenues and areas of life. How is it that the church can show up and provide for people who have genuine needs, assuming that we all have needs? But what can the church do, or what do you think it is that we might step in and meet the needs of first responders as clergy or as church?
I think that there are two levels to that. And part of that goes in general toward the reality that first responders don't always open up to just anyone. Like, you need to be in that relationship built, trusted space for the deeper work to happen. So on the surface level, the church really, they can just generally provide support without trying to make it into a big one-off hoopla to do of like, hey, look at our heroes, and let's do something to really lift them up. But really, it's just the everyday kind of acts of kindness, love, support that we try to practice within the church in general. Offering to have church members provide a meal that they can come to the church, or it can be brought to the station, just to say, we appreciate what you do and we're thankful for it, and here's one way that we can do this, even if it's just dropping the food off and leaving, but just to show that kind of acknowledgement that people are hungry and firefighters can eat, as I'm sure we all know, and Presbyterians can cook. So there's if we talk about Buechner's passion and need, there's a great overlap between those two realities, I think. But that's kind of surface level, where you can do a lot without doing a lot. The deeper work, if you do some of that surface level stuff enough, you get to go deeper with people. And honestly, and this ties in a bit more to what I did academically in terms of practices of the church that can benefit the overall health of mental health and spiritual health of first responders, is providing normalization. So often we stigmatize mental health struggles and mental well-being struggles. We point out weakness where we should just be saying, you as a human are normally reacting to an abnormal, stressful situation. And for us, these situations are not abnormal because we face them so regularly and we train for them so consistently, and we think about how we're going to respond to the next one. We take the previous one and we say, what are we going to do differently, do it better next time we encounter this? So for us, it's not abnormal, but in terms of our psyche and both our individual and our communal perspectives on the world, these are abnormal situations that we are regularly placing ourselves in. So the reactions that we have spiritually and emotionally and mentally are the normal reactions to abnormal situations. So where we encounter individuals and spaces that can normalize these kinds of reactions so that they don't overpower us and overcome us, that's the space where I think the church and clergy are in just a great space to be able to say, we have these songs of lament and anger and pain, along with the songs of joy and rejoicing. We have stories of sorrow and weeping and hurt alongside stories of healing and wholeness and community strengthening. We have the language and the vernacular in our heritage of faith to normalize what we're going through now, even though the stories may be generations upon generations apart from one another. And we have a space that encourages us to step away and remove ourselves a little bit. So if there, Kyle's chief, if you're listening, you know very well that in an incident you have a hot zone and a warm zone and a cool zone. The church can provide a space where people outside of an incident, but if they're living consistently in that individual hot zone, to remove themselves to a warm or cool zone and start doing some of the work of processing and debriefing and emotional mental off-gassing. And that's a great capability that the church can provide. It's just that space without judgment, with full welcome to say, just step back and breathe. And, let's, resettle where we are before we jump back into things. I think that's one of the greatest things. And it doesn't sound like a lot, because for church members, in a lot of ways, it's what we do anyway. So, we tend to look, as church members, we tend to look for what's that big, great thing that we can do. And that's not going to have the kind of impact that we ultimately want to have. The ultimate impact is come from doing the things that we naturally do, but doing it in a way that allows others to step into that, perhaps sometimes without the fear of being converted or proselytized, which is, I think, partly what keeps people away, perhaps, in the first place. So, yeah, that's my answer in a large nutshell.
That's all right. It's great. What do you think, Kevin?
I think Dr. Cashing has said it all.
I don't know about that. I want to hear your perspectives, Kevin, and yours as well, Kyle, because you're seeing this. Like I did a deep dive into all this, so I want to hear the different perspectives as well, even for my own self, if not for anyone else watching this.
You saw me give a thumbs up for churches providing food. Those were highlight days at the firehouse. Free, good food brought in.
It's funny we're talking about that example to me, because we actually did this very thing at the Alamance Fire Department last week. They had their first volunteer gathering. Our department is a pay department, but there's still a large group of volunteers who connect in and do that work as well. And with COVID, they have not been meeting in their regular way for a long time, and so this was their first Thursday night meeting back in months, and we had the opportunity to go and provide that meal. And I unfortunately had one of my many Zoom meetings that evening. I couldn't go and offer the blessing, but I saw in the photos of it, this extraordinary moment where our church was at its best. And I think if you know Alamance, Alamance is at its best when it's serving food or providing hospitality. But I saw our church at its best, and I saw the fire department, the energy in that, wanting to be back together and wanting so badly to get back into that routine, and just to be a part of that together, I think was a really wonderful way for them to have that fresh start. And I'm excited for that. And we too have done the First Responder Sunday, And that's gone really well, and we'll continue to do it. But I completely resonate with what you're both saying, that if we really want a relationship with the fire department, we're not going to get that out of having, one big celebratory Sunday in September. We're going to get that by showing up with food, and we're going to get that by providing the department opportunities to show up for the church as well. Unfortunately, we're going through this terrible season at my church. I've never seen anything like it. We're going to have our 12th burial early next week since the pandemic started. None of them are related to COVID-19, at least not directly. But we've just had this unbelievable season of death. And one of the things our fire department does for those who have been connected with it in the past is they dig the grave and often serve as pallbearers. And I've been watching them, unfortunately, over and over and over again, show up for people in our community on our graveside hill. And it means a ton that they are there, and that they are, in the ways given to them, caring for the family and caring for loved ones, and honoring the person who's left us. And that relationship I have unfortunately watched grow in these last few months, because we've just seen it so many times now. But I so appreciate their presence just as much as I appreciate the opportunity for us to be over there and helping them.
Yeah. And Kyle, I know you already do this as a pastor, but just for the sake of your Alamance folks, let me just reiterate. The church does best when we listen. So you have the chief, you have a lot of members. Don't ask me and Jason what those firefighters need. And I know Kyle knows this, but if Alamance wants to dig deeper, all you have to do is just ask those folks, Chief, how can we support and walk beside you? That's gold.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that's a great place to kind of wrap us up where we've been. Does anybody want a parting word or thought to offer before we kind of close down?
Yes, when Kyle actually joins the fire department, please give him lots of time to train. He will be a better pastor in the end. Fully support it.
And Kyle, if you need, or if anyone needs resources on the role and rank of chaplain, I'm happy to be a resource as those discussions go on. Maybe Alamance already has an understanding of where the chaplain fits in a formal structural sense, but if not, I can be a resource toward that. Some departments they like the idea of the chaplain, but they've never had, and they don't know how to go about incorporating one or getting one set up. And, those are logistical issues that are pretty easily overcome, but I'm happy to help out with that. And you should do it sooner rather than later, because in a lot of ways you're already doing it. So just make it formalized, put it into your ministry as this is continued and deeper community service and relationship between the church and the county, city, region at large. So just do it. And Kevin, I've said this to you as well. Boise may not take volunteers, but I think it's time that you approach either the chief or the director and say, this is a service that I'd love to be able to provide. I think I would love to dream or imagine with you how that might be able to work out.
These are crazy days. Maybe we'll take you up on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're too good not to have your feet in the fire, so to speak.
All right, guys. Again, thank you so much for checking in with me, and it's always a pleasure to spend time with you. I look forward to that fateful day when, for a lot of reasons, we're able to see each other face to face. But in the meantime, it's great to be with you this way. Thanks,
Kyle. Great to be with you.
for the good conversation this morning. So this has been Morning Coffee with Kyle and Jason and Kevin. We are so glad that you have tuned in and stuck with us to the end. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, I was listening, Kyle. I do agree with that. That just the ways in which we nurture that relationship and that connection. Yeah, I think I'm realizing more and more still in ways that continue to surprise me how much we can and should be doing more about that in a deliberate manner, and not just hey, wouldn't it be nice if we did such and such? Like, no, let's connect this. You know, these dots are pretty close to each other. We can connect them pretty easily.
And one of the things that teaches me is, and this is true for fire department, but it's actually just true, period, right? One of the things that's wrong with the church today is that we're so insular, and we just think in our own little boundary and bubble about the way that we minister to people. And that's so artificial and so stupid that, you know, why are we doing that when we can be folding in people who are, you know, outside of that very specific orbit, but you know, need us just the same. And again, kind of following up on Kevin's words, not to proselytize, you know, not to be recruiting, but you know, just to be doing ministry. I've always believed that if we do ministry, that other stuff just takes care of itself, right? If we're connected and engaged in building relationships, that's just what comes of that, and in a way that's healthy and not about us, but about others. Which again is, I think, often the problem the church has, is we make it about ourselves and not about, you know, what we can do for other people, thinking that's the way that we grow or change. It never is.
I mean, that's precisely what Paul did, right? In all of his journeys and ministries, that's exactly what he did. He went, and I mean, he may have been a bit more overt about it, because yes, his goal was to get people converted, but he did it by going and meeting where they were and building relationships for the sake of building the relationships and letting the Spirit do the work from there. I mean, it's not like Paul had a 5-point plan for church growth. He just went and did and got to know people. I mean, I feel like that's the entirety of Paul's ministry right there. What do you think?
Amen.
So